Can you believe it? Karen stormed up my driveway like she owned the whole darn neighborhood, a rifle slung over her shoulder as if she were some self-appointed warlord ready to lay down the law. Her face was a blazing shade of red. Was it the scorching summer heat or the fury bubbling inside her? Who knows? I could hear her shrieking something about unauthorized modifications to my property, her voice cutting through the air like a banshee on a mission. But honestly, did her words even matter? No way. What mattered, what really hit me was that gun. A gun. Since when do HOA enforcers strut around packing heat? Was she launching some bizarre vigilante crusade against my flower beds? I couldn't wrap my head around it, so I stepped outside, cool as a cucumber, leaning against the door frame with one hand casually tucked in my pocket, sizing her up. My eyes flicked over her. Good Lord, she was trembling like a leaf. Then they darted down to that rifle. Was it the gun giving her this shaky bravado she'd clearly never earned on her own? My eyebrow shot up, couldn't help it, and I fixed her with the longest, most sarcastic stare I could muster. Really, Karen? A gun for my driveway? I called out, letting the sarcasm drip from my voice like honey off a spoon. You know, I've had folks grumble about my lawn being a tad overgrown, but this is next-level insanity. What's the plan here? Are you gonna shoot me over a parking violation too? Her eyes popped wide, like saucers, and her grip on that rifle tightened so hard, I swear I could hear her knuckles crack. You think this is a joke? She spat, her voice shrill and quivering, practically vibrating with outrage. I'm not joking. I'm enforcing the HOA's rules, and you, mister, have made a serious mistake. I couldn't hold it back, I snorted, loud and proud. Oh, I'm sure I've made a mistake, huh? But let's get real. The real blunder here is you thinking you can just sashay onto my property with a gun like some wannabe neighborhood enforcer. She puffed out her chest. Oh, the audacity. Absolutely convinced her empty threats would have me quaking in my boots. You've been violating HOA codes for months now, and I'm here to put a stop to it once and for all. You've modified your property without approval, and that's a direct violation of the rules. I glanced over at my place, my little slice of heaven. There it was, my pride and joy. A pristine, modest house surrounded by a touch of wild landscaping that I'd poured my heart into. The horror of it all, right? But did that matter to Karen? Not a chance. Not when she had a personal vendetta to settle, her eyes glinting with that unhinged determination. My voice dropped low, a slow, deadpan drawl creeping in as I strolled toward her, casual as can be. You know, Karen, it's almost adorable cute, even that you think a lawnmower's the fix for every problem under the sun. But tell me, seriously, what in the world gives you the right to march up here with a gun? Did I miss some wild memo declaring the HOA an armed militia now? She didn't even flinch at my question. Can you believe the nerve? She was so full of herself, barreling ahead, rattling off her usual HOA gibberish like it was gospel. The HOA has the right, nay, the duty to enforce rules and regulations. And if you think you can just ignore them, you're sadly mistaken, buddy. You'll be fined for these violations. And if you dare refuse to comply, I'll make damn sure you're kicked out of here faster than you can blink. I had to hand it to her. She was a pro at sounding like she was in charge, wasn't she? But oh, she was way too full of herself. And that's when I decided to drop the bomb boom. I stood there for a heartbeat, letting the silence stretch out, thick and heavy. I could see her twitching, her face still flushed with that fiery rage, probably thinking she had me scared stiff. Her hands were slick with sweat on that rifle gross, and I couldn't help but smirk to myself, a little thrill bubbling up inside. I reached into my back pocket, slow and deliberate, and pulled out my sheriff's badge, holding it up high so she couldn't miss it. You might want to put that gun down. Karen, right now. You're talking to the sheriff, sweetheart. For one glorious split second, Her expression flickered. Did she even know what hit her? It was like watching someone speed through the 5 stages of disbelief faster than a race car. Then snap, it clicked. Her eyes ballooned, her face draining to a ghostly pale as the truth slammed into her like a freight train. She sputtered, tripping over her words. What? You're the sheriff? You're just some guy. Just some guy, huh? I shot back, giving her an exaggerated once-over, head to toe, like she was a specimen under a microscope. Tell me, Karen, how do you reckon I got this shiny badge? I've only been the sheriff around here for, about 6 years, 6 whole years. So I guess I must have slipped under your radar, huh? Real smooth moves there, detective. The rifle sagged in her hands finally as the reality of her colossal screw-up started sinking in deep. Karen was no longer the queen of the castle, and let me tell you, it felt so darn good. But hold up, let me rewind a sec and spill the beans on why Karen's epic blunder was so downright entertaining. Picture this. Karen had been a thorn in my side for months. I tell you, always dialing up the HOA to whine about something, anything. First, it was my fence too tall, too rustic, who knows. Then it was my tree too leafy, maybe. And then, because she just couldn't resist, she had a full-on meltdown over my Forks 4 Jeep. It wasn't some outrageous, oversized monster truck tearing up the streets, nope. Just a normal, everyday Jeep. But in Karen's warped little world, that was another unforgivable violation. Every single time she rolled up, I'd think to myself, oh, I'm gonna enjoy this so much. Because Karen's sweet, clueless Karen had no earthly idea who she was tangling with. Oh, sure, she strutted around like she was the boss, tossing HOA rules at me like they were carved in stone. But did she have a clue how far her reach actually went? Not a chance. She had no inkling of what I was capable of, none. See, she might have been messing with me, poking the bear, but I'd been messing with her right back. Oh, yes, I had. In fact, I was 2 steps ahead of her little game the whole time. Checkmate. Take this for example. You know how she tapped into my private well to water her precious, perfect garden? Yeah, that was cute, real cute. I let it slide the first few times, live and let live, right? But after her 4th or 5th call yammering about my unsightly garden, I'd had it up to here. So what did I do? I did what any self-respecting sheriff would do. I flushed her irrigation system with sewage. Yup, you heard me, sewage. Freeze frame that moment. There I am. The guy whose private well HOA Karen illegally tapped into for her prized petunias. And what did I do about it? I sent a river of sewage right through her system. Oh, buddy, that was just the beginning of the fun. Now, before you jump down my throat screaming, that's illegal, hold your horses. I was totally within my rights, folks. I'm talking loopholes. Big, beautiful, glorious loopholes that I knew like the back of my hand. And Karen? She didn't suspect a thing, not for 1 second did she see it coming. But there she was, standing in my driveway, the rifle dipping lower in her shaky hands. And she wasn't even thinking about that yet. No, she was too busy scrambling, her brain in overdrive, trying to figure out how she'd gone from neighborhood enforcer extraordinaire to completely out of her depth. Oh, how the mighty had fallen. And me? I was already a step ahead always. I wasn't done with her yet, not by a long shot, no sir. I think you should leave, Karen, I said, my voice icy cold, cutting through the tension like a knife. Before you make this worse for yourself, trust me, you really don't want to test me right now. Her face went ashen pale as a ghost, and just as she opened her mouth to fire back, the distant wail of sirens pierced the air. Looks like my little backup just arrived, I said with a grin. But Karen? She had no clue, none. She just stood there, gawking at me, totally blindsided. Can you imagine the shock? What happened next? Oh, it's a doozy, let me tell you, but you'll have to hang tight for the next chapter. Karen stood there, frozen like a deer in headlights, her mouth hanging open as those sirens grew louder, echoing through the neighborhood. She whipped her head around, probably wondering, how in the heck did he pull this off so fast? Her brain was racing, struggling to catch up, and honestly, I was soaking up every delicious second of her unraveling. She'd thought she could waltz right onto my property, rifle in hand, and bully me into submission. What a fantasy. What she hadn't counted on, not in a million years, was that I wasn't just some average Joe homeowner she could push around. Don't even think about it, I said coolly, stepping closer, my voice sharp enough to slice through steel. You don't want to make this worse. Karen, trust me, you're already in deep. She blinked, floundering to pull herself together. The look on her face, pure disbelief mixed with a stinging dose of frustration. But here's the kicker, she didn't have control anymore. For the first time since she'd stormed up my driveway like a one-woman army, she wasn't holding the reins. Oh, how the tables had turned. You can't just... She stammered, grasping at straws, desperate for anything to say. This is my neighborhood too. I'm just enforcing the rules. I tilted my head, letting the sarcasm ooze out like syrup. The rules? Oh, you mean those rules you cooked up in that wild imagination of yours? Because last time I checked, yep, I'm sure of it. The rules didn't include showing up at someone's house armed to the teeth. And correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't the HOA lack its own private army? Her grip tightened on the rifle, stubborn as ever, but it was crystal clear she had no idea what to do with it now. The power she thought she had, slipping right through her fingers. You don't scare me, she spat, her face turning an even deeper shade of red, redder than a ripe tomato. I'll make sure you regret this. The HOA will have you removed, I'll have you. Before she could finish her rant, I raised an eyebrow. Oh, the drama, and let the silence hang there, thick and heavy, for just a beat too long. The HOA, I said, dropping my voice to a near whisper, all mysterious-like. Do you even have a clue what the HOA's been up to, Karen? Because I do, oh, I do. That stopped her dead in her tracks, bam. She blinked at me, her angry comeback fizzling out as her mind scrambled to process it. Here's the thing, I went on, stepping back with a smug little grin I couldn't hide. I've been digging into the HOA for months, Karen. I know all about your shady little secret deals, those fines, the illegal fines, the extortion. And guess what else? I know you've been tapping into my well for your precious garden. And Karen, darling, that's not just some HOA rule violation, that's flat out illegal. She went pale, paler than a sheet. And for the first time, she wasn't the one calling the shots. No more all-powerful HOA enforcer act, she was the one who had to listen now. Her hands trembled, just a little, but her mouth kept flapping, like she couldn't catch up to the crashing reality around her. You're bluffing, she said weakly, her voice wobbling like a broken record. You don't have anything on me. You're just some sheriff in this tiny nowhere town? You think you can scare me? You think I'm afraid of you? I didn't even flinch, not a bit. I leaned back against my porch railing, crossing my arms, letting my calm vibe clash with the chaos swirling in her wild eyes. Scare you? Oh no, Karen, I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just here to remind you there's a line, a big fat line, and you crossed it, big time. The sirens were closing in now, louder, closer. And I could tell Karen was starting to realize she was the only thing standing between herself and a mountain of legal trouble. Her stubbornness? It was only digging her deeper, way deeper. You've been at this way too long, Karen, I said, the words sliding off my tongue like I was swatting away a pesky fly. I couldn't wait to squash. Every time you've called up the HOA to tattle on me or anyone else, you've just shoveled yourself into a bigger hole. You think I don't know about your sneaky little scheme to jack up fees on folks who don't even know their rights? You've been trying to drag everyone down around here. Well, guess what? It ends now, right here, right now. Her face twisted up in rage again. Oh, the fury, but this time it wasn't doing her any favors. That anger? It wasn't powering her up anymore. It was just laying bare her desperation. She wanted to scream, to lash out, but the words stuck in her throat choked her. She could feel the power slipping away. Oh, how it must have stung. You can't just ruin everything, she muttered. And for the first time since she barged in, there was fear in her voice, real, raw fear. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm just following the rules. You're the one who's been following the rules? I interrupted, my voice slicing through hers like a hot blade through butter. Oh, I couldn't let that nonsense stand. Following what rules, Karen? The ones that let you rob your neighbors blind? The ones that give you free rein to drive folks into financial ruin over petty nonsense like a slightly overgrown shrub? Is that what you're calling following the rules, huh? Because to me, that sounds more like a full-blown crime spree. I could see it, I could see it clear as day. That flicker of doubt flashing in her eyes. She knew I was dead on. She knew I wasn't bluffing, not for a second. And what stung her even more, she had no clue, no earthly idea how deep I dug into the HOA's dirty little secrets. She thought she was squaring off with some random pushover who'd just roll over and take it. But oh, how wrong she was. I'd been waiting for this moment, watching her every slimy step, cataloging every single mistake she'd made, every last one. Karen's hands trembled like leaves in a storm as she hoisted that rifle again. But this time? Oh, this time it wasn't confidence driving her, it was desperation. She was clutching at straws, trying to convince herself she still had the upper hand. You don't know what you're doing, she hissed, her voice quaking under the weight of it all. Can you believe the nerve? You think you can just waltz around ruining people's lives because you don't like the rules? I stepped forward closer, boulder cutting the distance between us, with purpose. I'm not ruining your life, Karen, I said, my voice soft but firm as steel, dripping with the weight of truth. I'm just holding you accountable for your own rotten actions. You've been wrecking other people's lives for way too long. Now it's your turn to face the music. That's when she cracked. Oh, she lost it completely. In a wild panic, she dropped that rifle to the ground with a clatter that echoed like a gunshot, stumbling back like the earth had shifted beneath her. Her whole tough gal act shattered in an instant, gone, and I could see her mind spinning, racing, scrambling for any way out of this mess. But too late, Karen, way too late. There was no escape hatch for her now, not a chance. Don't think you're getting away with this. She spat, her voice barely a whisper, weak and raspy with fear. I'll fight you. You won't get away with this. I smirked, couldn't help it. A slow, satisfied grin spreading across my face. You're already fighting a losing battle, Karen, don't you see it? But go ahead, keep swinging. You'll get your shot to explain yourself soon enough. Just don't forget this moment, oh no, because this is the one where you finally realized you bit off way more than you could ever chew. And just like that, bam, the sirens screeched to a stop, a glorious sound ringing in my ears. I didn't even glance back, why would I? I didn't need to. Karen was already flailing, her brain churning as she tried to weasel her way out of this disaster, but good luck with that. The cavalry had rolled in, and there I stood, cool and collected, ready for whatever came next. The only question buzzing in my head was, how far would she push this before she truly grasped how badly she'd screwed up? This was just the start, oh yes, and I hadn't even begun to play my full hand. But Karen, she was about to find out the hard way what happens when you mess with the wrong guy. And let me tell you, That's when the real fun was going to kick off. What happened next? Oh, buckle up. Because Karen had no idea how deep this rabbit hole went. She was about to get a front row seat to the reckoning. The sirens cut off right at the end of my driveway, and the sharp slam of car doors reverberated through the neighborhood. Boom, boom, boom. I didn't turn around, no way. My eyes were locked on Karen's face, frozen in this wild mix of shock and disbelief. I could feel the tide turning, the whole moment shifting under my feet. Can you imagine what was going through her head? I could almost hear her brain grinding away, gears clanking as she tried to process just how epically she'd misjudged this whole showdown. She was still standing there, clinging to that rifle like it was some magic shield against the crashing reality around her. Think you might want to put that down now, Karen, I said casually, tossing a glance at the officers stepping out of their patrol cars, cool as ever. You've had your little fun, but it's over now, done. The officers closed in, their sharp eyes scanning the scene. Did they even need a briefing? Nope. They had this pegged in a heartbeat. I knew most of them, heck, half of them were probably sick to death of fielding HOA complaints themselves. That group had a nasty habit of picking fights with the wrong folks. And the greedier they got, the more people like me started pushing back hard. I stepped aside smooth as silk, giving the officers plenty of room to do their thing. Karen's eyes darted around, bouncing from one cop to the next, and for the first time, oh, sweet justice. I saw her sweat. Her hands were still shaking. That rifle, her pathetic security blanket, now nothing but a liability dragging her down. The officers didn't need me to lay it out. They were already on her like hawks. "MAAM," one of them said, his tone calm but rock solid. "We're going to have to ask you to step aside. We'll handle this from here, no arguments." Karen started sputtering, the chaos throwing out anything she could grab onto to save her skin. "You don't understand. This is all a mistake. I was just enforcing the rules. He's the one who started this. He's been breaking the law for months." Her voice was high-pitched, frantic, pure panic, and I could see it rising, clawing at her like a wild animal. But escape? Not a chance, not now. The officer flicked his eyes to me, then back to her, just waiting for her to realize she wasn't wiggling out of this one. "What rules, Karen?" he asked, cool and steady. "I'm sure you can tell us all about your precious rules back at the station, but right now, you're holding an illegal firearm that's a bigger problem than your HOA code violations, sweetheart." Her face went paler ghost white, and I couldn't help it. A little spark of satisfaction flared up inside me. This wasn't just about one dumb gun, oh no. It was about all the ways she'd been stomping over this neighborhood, wielding the HOA like her personal wrecking ball. She was finally getting the reality check she'd dodged for months. About time. "Is there anything you want to add, Sheriff?" one of the officers asked, his voice slicing through the tension like a razor. I flashed him a half smile. "Oh, the irony, yeah," I said, letting my tone drip with it. "You might want to ask her about how she's been siphoning my private well to water her precious garden. She might explain that one better than I can. Go ahead. Karen, give it a shot." The officer's eyes narrowed sharp, and Karen's face twisted up in confusion. But that didn't last long. It was like the weight of her own actions was crashing down on her, bit by bit, piece by ugly piece. The officer's partner whipped out a pair of handcuffs and moved in swift, and the second she tried to jerk away, he grabbed her wristband. "No, you can't do this." "This is all a misunderstanding," Karen screamed, her desperation ringing out loud and clear, unmistakable. Did I feel bad? Not for a single second, no way. She'd been shoving people around for so long, acting like she was untouchable. And now? Now it was all unraveling. Every petty complaint she'd ever filed, every fine she'd squeezed out, every fake violation she'd conjured up. It was all boomeranging back to smack her right in the face. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for possession of an illegal weapon, among other things," the officer said, his tone final, no room for debate. Karen didn't fight as they cuffed her, But that look on her face, it screamed everything. She was still grasping for an out, still trying to wrap her head around the fact that she'd crossed a line she couldn't claw her way back from. But too late, way too late. The officer glanced at me again, his expression softening just a touch. "Looks like you've got some paperwork ahead, Sheriff." "Yeah," I said, letting out a long, slow breath. "And it's gonna take a while. Might be smart to start jotting down notes on Karen's little HOA escapade. You won't believe half the garbage she's pulled." The officers hauled her off to the patrol car, and I hung back for a sec, taking stock of the chaos that had just unfolded. Wow. It all started as a simple HOA annoyance, something we all just shrugged off, knowing Karen was a perpetual pain in the neck. But now, it had ballooned into something massive. She was about to choke on her own medicine, and I couldn't help but feel a swell of pride at how it all went down perfectly. But this wasn't just about knocking her down a peg. No, sir. This was bigger. The HOA had turned into a festering cancer in our community. A pack of power trippers who thought they could bend everyone to their will just because they had a smidge of authority. And Karen? She was just the symptom, the loud, obnoxious symptom. The real disease was the HOA itself. I strolled back toward my house. A tiny wave of relief washing over me. This chapter was closed. At least for now. But was it over? Not a chance. Karen's arrest was just the first domino tipping over crash, and there was so much more to unearth. So much dirt still buried. The HOA had been covering their tracks for far too long, but their house of cards? It was teetering, ready to collapse. I glanced back at the patrol cars as they pulled away, watching Karen, who'd thought she held all the power, reduced to just another soul facing justice. But the best part? This was only the beginning. Oh yes, the second she got out of jail, when she finally clocked what was really going on, she'd come gunning for me. I saw it in her eyes. And me? I was ready, bring it on. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. So there I was on my porch, sucking in a deep breath, the warm breeze brushing my skin as I soaked it all in. One thing was crystal clear. Karen might have had her little moment of glory, but it was finito now. And the real fun? It was just gearing up. She wouldn't even know what hit her next. That was the sweetest part. The sun dipped low, painting the sky a soft orange as I kicked back on my porch, sipping a cold drink, pure bliss. It'd been a few days since Karen got hauled off in cuffs, and the neighborhood was eerily quiet, too quiet. Folks were buzzing. Of course, small towns spread gossip like wildfire, and the fallout from her arrest. Everyone was still chewing on it. But for me, this was just the calm before the storm, mark my words. Karen might be sidelined for now, but sit quietly. No way, not after all this. She'd be back, and I was ready. So ready. The HOA had made one fatal slip-up. They underestimated me big time. Karen fell into the same trap, thinking she could shove me around because I was just some guy next door. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't have dreamed, was that I'd been watching them for months, tracking her, eyeing every HOA crony, studying how they slithered around. I'd already piled up enough dirt to bury them 6 feet under, and I'd barely scratched the surface. There was more where that came from. I heard a car engine humming in the distance, and peeked down the street. Sure enough, there she was. Karen was back. And not alone, oh no, she had a lawyer in tow. Of course she did, she'd need one. I stood up, sauntering to the end of the driveway to face them head on. Her car screeched up in front of my house, and the door flew open out. She stepped, looking like she'd been through a war zone. Her face was pale, her hair a tangled mess, and that smug I run this neighborhood vibe, gone poof. Now she looked humbled, crushed even. And sorry for her? Not a bit, not me. Sheriff, she sneered, her voice cutting through the air like a venomous hiss, her eyes narrowing into slits of pure spite. Can you believe the gall? You really think you've won, don't you? I leaned against the mailbox, Cool as ice, not in a rush to toss a single word her way. Why would I be? I could see that lawyer hovering next to her, arms crossed tight, his face locked in that smug, know-it-all expression like he thought he could intimidate me into backing down. But intimidated? Me? Not a chance in hell. I'd been waiting for this moment. Oh, I'd been dreaming of it. Karen, poor deluded Karen, had never once thought this far ahead, can you imagine? She'd been so wrapped up in herself, so sure she could lord over everyone with her petty power and her ridiculous little rules. But what she didn't see, what she couldn't even fathom, was that the very system she leaned on like a crutch was about to snap and bring her crashing down hard. You're out of jail, I finally said, letting the sarcasm ooze from my voice like syrup, thick and deliberate. Guess you didn't think your little stunt would spiral this far, did you, Karen? Her eyes flickered with a flash of anger. Oh, I saw it, but she was smart enough to bite her tongue, at least for now. She was on the defensive, teetering on the edge, and I could tell she wasn't ready for this, not even close. Did she have any idea what was barreling her way? Nope, not a clue. You don't know what you're dealing with, she said, her voice dropping low, dark and menacing. Like she thought she could still scare me. You think this is over? You're dead wrong. The HOA has deep pockets, deeper than you can imagine, and I'm not the only one who can turn your life into a living hell. I smiled, oh, I couldn't help it, and took a slow, satisfying sip of my drink, letting the cool liquid slide down my throat as I savored the moment. Oh, Karen, sweet. Clueless Karen, I don't think you get it, do you? I said, my tone light but loaded. This isn't about you anymore, not even a little. You see, I've already been chatting with a few folks, important folks. I've got proof, Karen, proof of every slimy thing you've done, every dirty trick the HOA's been pulling. You've made a lot of enemies out there, tons, and guess what? I'm just the first one to step up to the plate. Her eyes flickered again, doubt creeping in, and I caught it, that tiny crack splitting through her tough girl mask. The lawyer beside her shifted, his eyes darting to her like a nervous tick, but she ignored him. Oh, she was laser focused on me now, and why wouldn't she be? She knew deep down, she knew exactly what I was talking about. She'd been running the HOA like her own personal fiefdom, a little empire built on bullying and greed, squeezing every last dime out of folks too beaten down to fight back. But now, now that I had the upper hand, now that I had the leverage, it was a whole new ball game. You think you've got something on me? She said, a shaky little laugh slipping out forced. Fake, pathetic, as she tried to plaster over the panic bubbling up inside her. You think you can just waltz in and destroy everything? I've worked for everything I've built. I stepped forward calm, steady, unshaken, keeping my tone casual, almost playful, like I was toying with her. I don't think I'm destroying anything, Karen, not a bit. I think you're doing a bang-up job of that, all by yourself, don't you see it? She was starting to feel it. Oh yes, the dawning realization that she wasn't calling the shots anymore. That smirk of hers, it faded fast, washed away by a tide of panic sweeping over her face. The lawyer shifted again, squirming now, but he didn't say a word. Did he know he couldn't save her? Probably he wasn't dumb. Do you want to know what I've got? I asked, raising an eyebrow, letting the question hang there like a storm cloud. You'd better sit down for this. Karen, go on, grab a seat. I could see it in her eyes. She was hesitating, teetering on the edge. She wanted to brush me off, to scoff and tell me I was full of hot air. But deep down, way down in that rattled core of hers, she knew I had her dead to rights. I had everything, every damning document, every incriminating email, every filthy little secret she'd buried over the years. I had the proof of her illegal fines, those sneaky cash grabs. The illegal tap on my well, oh, that was a good one. And the shady backdoor deals with contractors nobody else knew about. And It wasn't just Karen in the crosshairs anymore, no way. The whole HOA was neck deep in this mess, and I was going to make sure every soul in town found out every last one. You've been using the HOA as a weapon, I said slowly, deliberately, watching her face twist as the words sank in bam, bam, bam. And guess what, Karen? I'm not the only one who's noticed, far from it. I've got people, lots of people, who've been watching your little reign of terror unfold. Folks who've been too scared to speak up until now, that is. Her eyes went wide, huge, her breath hitching, quick and shallow, as the gravity of it all started crushing down on her. Was she finally getting it? Oh, she was starting to, but I wasn't done, not by a long shot. I'm gonna make sure the whole town knows what you've been up to, I declared, my voice rising with the thrill of it. And not just the town, oh no. I've already reached out to a few people who can do way more than whisper rumors in the wind. We're talking real consequences here. Karen, big ones. She stumbled back, literally staggered, her face crumpling like a house of cards in a hurricane as she grasped the sheer magnitude of what was coming her way. You can't do this. I already am. I cut her off, sharp and final, shutting down her weak protest. And you won't be able to hide behind your little HOA shield anymore, not this time. This is bigger than you, Karen, way bigger. This is about people finally getting the justice they deserve. Justice you've denied them for too long. Oh, I could feel it, the satisfaction surging inside me, hot and electric. Watching Karen crumble right there in front of me, watching her panic claw its way to the surface. It was like all those months of frustration, all those petty annoyances she'd piled on me and everyone else, were finally melting away, poof, coming to a glorious end. The justice she'd twisted and controlled for so long, it was slipping out of her greedy little hands, and I wasn't about to let her snatch it back, not a chance. She whirled on her lawyer, her face flushed red with anger, fury, and hissed, "You need to do something now." But that poor guy, he just shrugged, helpless, useless, because he knew the game was up, over. Finito. Don't worry, I said, turning on my heel with a flourish, my voice ringing with confidence. You'll get your day in court, Karen, oh yes, but I promise you, it won't be the victory parade you're dreaming of, not even close. I strode back to my porch, leaving Karen and her lawyer standing there, dumbstruck in the dust. The whole neighborhood was watching, eyes everywhere, and I didn't know exactly how this would all play out, but one thing was rock solid certain: Karen's reign of terror, done kaput. The wind picked up, rustling through the trees, and a quiet, triumphant calm settled over me. Oh, it felt good. This wasn't just about Karen anymore, no way. It was about everyone she'd trampled, everyone she'd tried to control with her iron fist. And now, the tables had turned, flipped right over, and let me tell you, it felt damn good indeed.